and how different, calmer, more at ease kind of within the job does he seem?
Yeah, he absolutely seems more comfortable, more engaging, less combative with us. There's no doubt. And he's acknowledged, like, look, I didn't know how I was supposed to be. I didn't know what this was supposed to be like. You gotta remember, this is a guy, like, he was like a behind the bench assistant coach before he took over. It wasn't even a situation where, like, if somebody got ejected, Ime got ejected the year before, Brad got ejected, he's stepping, like, Joe was nowhere near a role like this. He coached Division II college basketball in Fairmont, West Virginia.
Celtics Beat is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome in. New Celtics Beat. Training camp is underway. Media Day is behind us. And I hope you tuned into last week's show. I hope you've been tuning in, quite frankly, for months, because we have been telling you, maybe not in every little detail along the way, but we have been telling you what was going to happen, what we felt strongly anyway was going to happen. Yeah, the card, everything had to align and blah, blah, blah. But we don't get a lot of chances to take, true, just impassioned victory laps on this show. This is certainly one when it comes to telling you for months Malcolm Brogdon would not be here when the season started, and that obviously if he was to go, you had to get a good guard in return. And on top of that I wasn't sold Derek White would in fact be this team's starting point guard, and that the team was more comfortable with him coming off the bench. Now, that part still remains to be seen. We'll find out. Starting five's a little bit overrated when it comes to all of that. We can dive into that stuff, but very pleased to have Adam Himmelsbach of the Boston Globe here with us. And there are so many different things that we have to cover here with Adam, but what you may not know, because we do this once a year with Adam, at least once a year anyway, and you don't typically you can read.
Syracuse wins 10 football games. That's
where I wanted to go. So the agreement last year, Adam, was that we would get you for a second time, depending on how many football games Syracuse won. We're all Syracuse people. Had Syracuse won enough, we would have had you back a second time, because you don't do a lot of these interviews. You make time for us. We greatly appreciate that. Syracuse didn't hold its end of the bargain last year, but off to a 4-1 start right now. So what's it take? How many do we need this year to get you for another in-season interview?
Let's keep the same. We had 10 wins last year was the mark.
Okay.
And I think we set that when they were 6-0 for 5.
I think that's
maybe.
right.
So it wasn't like the start of the year. It was like, all right, it's somewhat realistic maybe. And then they just tanked down the end. So yeah, let's keep it at 10. They have a soft schedule after they get through Florida State.
I wouldn't call it soft. They got to play. I think 4 of their like UNC's ranked, Duke's ranked, Miami's ranked, and Florida State's ranked. They have 4 ranked opponents left.
I don't think they play Duke, to be honest, but maybe they do.
I don't know.
All I know is I thought they had a real shot to beat Clemson, not get embarrassed the way that they did.
It's always the Clemson. It was the same thing last year. They went into Clemson, had a chance to win that game to decide, let's not give the ball to Sean Tucker. We're just going to keep throwing, even though we have the lead against a team on the road. And it literally, because confident. I was telling you, like, text Himmelsbach, like, I'm feeling confident. Like, he better get ready for show number 2. I was like puffing my chest out. Not confident this year. Not confident.
Yeah, we'll see. 4-1 start, but there's one thing I could be abundantly confident in, and that is that the vast majority of listeners of this show do not give a damn about Syracuse football and want to hear about the Celtics from someone who.
I was just say how many you lost during that opening segment.
I know. I would just fast forward, skip 30, skip 30, skip 30, whatever. All right, Celtics. I'll wave my arms for people watching on the video. We're ready to talk Celtics at this point. Adam, you've been around this team as closely as anybody. Obviously, the reporting has been fantastic. You have become, and this is not a new thing in recent weeks or months, it's been this way for years. You've become the, I don't want to make you blush, but it's true. When Adam speaks, we listen when it comes to reporting on the Boston Celtics. You've become the guy. Everybody else is terrific, but it's like, well, has Himmelsbach reported on this yet? That's just the bottom line. And so that in mind, let's get your impressions of what has been going on, obviously, with this team. Before we get into the moves specifically, just the overall sort of temperament. I mean, very clearly, vibes are high. For anyone that watched the Jrue Holiday introductory press conference a couple of days ago, I tweeted out, it was the, like, best shape of our lives in vibes, energy in a press conference when it comes to Brad Stevens couldn't wipe the grin off his face. Wick Grossbeck, I thought was gonna, like buy Jrue Holiday an apartment. It was like, can we move in together? It was getting nuts with how excited, obviously, everybody is about this acquisition, where this team appears and hopes to be going as long as it's healthy, obviously. So give us a closer look at what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the same thing you did. Honestly, I thought, and this is no fault of Jrue's, like, he almost seemed a little uncomfortable with it, to be honest. Just being gassed through the press conference, basically by Wick, Steve, and Brad. But it was a lot. Like, some of us were looking at each other afterwards, like, that just felt like a lot in terms of expectations and raising kind of the hopes just instantly when this guy had been in town for like 24 hours. But there's no doubt, like, people are feeling good about where this team is. And it felt like for the first time, like, with the Celtics, there's always in the offseason, there's always so much uncertainty. Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? I know fans get upset because for a lot of years, especially the later Danny Ainge years, those big deals sometimes fell through. But now there's a sense of like, okay, we've really established this excellent top six we feel like can win a championship. And it feels that way. It feels like, I think I tweeted something like this, like, this doesn't feel like a regular season team because they don't have the depth that they've had in past years.
Right.
I don't think it's a team that's necessarily going to win. Like, even though they are championship favorites, I don't think necessarily they'll win like 62 games or something like that. But they're built for the playoffs when rotations get whittled down, and these are the guys you're sticking with, and their top six can go up against anyone.
To that point, I mean, obviously, like, injuries can happen, whether it's freak stuff, random stuff. So I don't want to take anything for granted in that respect. But it's nice to not enter a season. This is something we've talked so much about, Ed. It's nice to not enter a season when you can already pinpoint a handful of guys that you have injury concerns about. Malcolm Brogdon was one of them. He's off the roster. Obviously, Rob Williams, perennially one of those guys. He's off the roster. Still, you have Kristaps Porzingis concern there. You know that Al Horford's going to get load managed to the moon because of just age and whatever else. And again, injuries in general can happen. But to your point, it's why I've been saying I'm not even so sure that they'll hit the over on their over-under for wins at 54.5, is because I just think that they don't care about seeding. They don't care about, this, that, and the other. It's about being healthy and ready for the postseason, establishing, as you said, that top 6, even 7 guys. And so that in mind, not having the depth they had, but having the stronger top 6 clearly than what it's been in recent years. I mean, when Jrue Holiday is your 4th scoring option, he's a guy that can give you 20 points a game. It really says something, obviously. Is this team in your mind better than it was when last season ended?
When last season ended, yeah. I still think I'm really curious to see. It's such a weird thing to talk about, like the stuff you can't really put an actual measure on. But the Marcus Smart effect, I'm still going to be fascinated by. I just don't know. They're more talented, yes, but he was so important to like the fabric of this franchise. The way obviously the things you saw, he's an incredible defender. He didn't get enough credit for his offensive game. People looked at his, 3-point percentage not being tremendous, but he was the general of that offense that almost won a title. And he was the guy like that kind of guys looked up, like when things went wrong, he was the voice. When other teams pushed them around, he was the one stepping up. And that's a significant loss, I think. They might not need it. Who knows? Like I said, some of those things are intangibles. You don't really know how important they are, but I'm really curious to see what it looks like without him. Several people told me part of the reason that they made this move, they think it's time for Jason and Jalen to kind of step into that role now, and this will force them to do that a little bit.
I want to piggyback off that because I am actually curious, Adam, because you might know some things that we don't know. I think part of the reason why they might have pushed for Jrue so much is he's kind of, if you're going to replace Marcus Smart with anybody in the league, Drew's probably on the short list of guys that you would say, yeah, that he can do a lot of what Marcus did. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm talking Absolutely. Teammate in the locker room, play on the court offensively and defensively. And then like Marcus was a big part of the community out off the court too, which I think is also important to the fabric of Marcus Smart. So my question for you, Adam, kind of revolves around trading through Jrue Holiday. Maybe you know some things we don't know. Obviously the deal went through. Everybody's thrilled. You know, again, the vibes are immaculate. Brad is talking about how he asked Danny Ainge for years, hey, can we get Jrue Holiday on this team? Like, can we make this happen? Do you feel like that maybe there was like, we're not being outbid for Jrue Holiday on this one. We're ending up with Jrue, you know, almost regardless of the price, because they wanted to maybe fill that Marcus Smart role, and how well Jrue kind of seamlessly fits this team. Do you sense any of that?
Yeah, I mean, you never say like we'll pay whatever the price is. Like obviously there's always a limit, you know. And I was told initially the asking price was extreme, not just to the Celtics, but to other teams around the league. We're talking like 4 or 5 first-round picks or swaps and things like that. But you know, that's how those negotiations start. That's not that unusual. And then you talk a little bit and say, okay, let's get down to brass tacks. But they wanted him. Like, you know, I know I have this reputation as like the cooler on Celtics deals that's like formed over the years, and people get mad like, oh, you always bring bad news. I'm like, it's not like, I'm just telling you what's happening. Like, I'm not intentionally being like, oh, I don't want this to happen or this isn't going to happen. Like, I'm saying like, hey, I found out this is not going to happen. This one felt different from the moment, I guess, right after the Lillard trade went down. Speaking to people, it wasn't that like, yeah, we'll see. It was, yeah, we want this guy. It just sounded different. It felt different. And as the week progressed, none of that changed. And Evan, to your point, those Marcus Smart questions, without question, become a lot easier to figure out now that Jrue's here. Because as a player, he feels he's a better offensive player than Marcus. You know, defensively, you can make an argument. But, you know, off the court stuff he's like you said, he's active in the community. Everyone talks about this guy as like a great guy. I've never spoken to people about a player and heard such a unanimous, like, this guy's an incredible person, incredible teammate. So no doubt he feels part of that.
Talking to people around the team and who covered the team, it's sort of, I don't know if you would agree with this on your own personal level, but you know, dealing away Marcus Smart, Grant Williams, Rob Williams, those three in particular, no disrespect to Malcolm Brogdon, but guys who had obviously been around for a while at multiple deep playoff runs, really core pieces of what this team has been looking to achieve in winning Banner 18. Felt like there's a lot of, oh man, it hurts to lose these three guys all in the same offseason, but it's been sort of emphasized more in a personal way. Like, these are all good guys and great personalities, people that you like talking to, great community guy, great, all of that stuff gets mentioned before basketball. And that's not to, you know, de-emphasize their impact on the floor, especially Marcus's or Rob when he's healthy. But I feel like there was a lot of, you know, we're really going to miss these guys as people more than their basketball fit. Whereas Kristaps Porzingis coming in and Jrue Holiday coming in, there's just been a transformation in terms of, wow, we can do a lot of different things we couldn't do before. Bringing these guys in, we believe that we are just, yeah, it hurts to lose those guys on a personal level, but on a basketball level, we are just better and more equipped now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's part of being a fan, right? The people become, and that's what this is. People become attached to players. Marcus Smart had been here longer than anyone, and he kind of fit this city with his style and just the way he played and the way he approached things. And he embraced that. And when you lose a guy like that, people are going to be upset. That's not to say the changes aren't better, like whatever. Sometimes, let's say you start a new job. There's parts you're like, oh, you know, I missed this and this. But I'm in a better situation. This situation is actually better. Like, it's okay to have both in the same conversation. So I think bringing in these guys, they're going to play differently. Joe Mazzulla has emphasized that a lot this past week. He goes, look, we're going to play to our personnel. We're going to restructure things a little bit. We have now a 7'3" big guy who can like hit threes. We didn't have that last year. You know, now we have a guy in Jrue who people talk about, not just him as a defender, which everybody knows, but a lot of people have talked over and over about his strength, just like his ability to just be physical with players, no matter who they are, from, I talked to Charles Lee about him. He goes, man, Milwaukee, he's on Steph Curry 1 minute and Julius Randle the next. Like, not a lot of guys can do that, but he has the physical traits to do it. So I think Missoula is really looking forward to figuring things out. And, I think that's what maybe the first month might be a little, not rocky, but they're definitely going to be experimenting and trying to find what works with this team moving forward, because there are going to be some significant changes in the way they play.
Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Ever wish you could navigate the betting field with the confidence of a pro? Enter Odds Are. They're not a sports book, but they're the sports betting advisor you always needed. It's like having a playbook for smarter bets right in your pocket. I've been absolutely loving the experience, and I think you will too, especially since Celtics All Access listeners get a 30-day free trial. Elevate your game day and join the smart betting revolution. Go get it at oddsr.com/Celtics. That's oddsr.com/Celtics.
Do you think that Jrue Holiday is here long term? There's been a lot of talk about his potential. He's extension eligible, obviously, in February. It seems like Brad Stevens would like him to retire here. But, do you think that we see him get a new multi-year deal?
Yeah, it seems, talking to people on both sides, that is very much the plan. He obviously has to wait 6 months to sign an extension. So I think April 2nd, I'm just putting a story today, is the exact day he would be eligible for one, but I would expect them to figure something out. This is not a Jrue Holiday rental. And you gotta remember, the Celtics in general, like, they've gotten older too. Like, not just Tatum and Brown getting older, but like as a roster, like Jrue, if they make the finals, Jrue will turn 34 during the finals. Like, obviously Al's older. That's 2 years 6. Like, Derek White will be 30. Like, there's this for the longest time, this team was they're coming close, but it was always like, oh, but they're so young still. Like, oh, this was a chance, but just wait until these guys mature and develop. And the sense you get also just watching the way they're putting together this team is they realize, all right, this is our window. This window is now. That's not to say they can't, in a few years move on from Jrue and Al and keep building around Tatum, who still has plenty of years left. But there's no doubt the kind of like youth movement days are over with this team, and they're trying to win championship.
You had Wick the other day talking about a 6-year window.
Yeah, that was an interesting number. I just took that as Tatum's window.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. You mentioned Derek White. Where do things stand with a potential extension for him? Is that a priority for the organization or even for him? Or do you think he might be thinking about potentially getting more on the open market?
Yeah, we're not sure. I haven't heard a lot about Derek's extension yet. There definitely have had talks and will. Derek's the kind of guy that he's never going to come out and say, I deserve this, I need this. And if for some reason it doesn't work out, like, remember last year, Grant was a little upset when he didn't get one. Like, you won't hear that from Derek if it doesn't happen. But I'm sure they'll look, if something works out for both sides, they'll try to find a way. But they want Derek to be a part of this team long term as well.
Do you think he feels that way?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he wants to win. And we asked him the other day about, because here's a guy who thought he was hands down the starting point guard on this team, and all of a sudden Jrue Holiday's in, and now it's like, oh, is Derek even going to start? And Missoula said he's not sure yet how he's going to work with the starting lineups, but Derek's very much a guy, like, this team is filled with like those guys, like quintessential teammates, and you won't hear any like chirping from him. It won't be like Malcolm Brogdon 2.0 if he comes off the bench again. And but I think he's happy to be on a winning team. He'll have if he comes off the bench, he's still going to have a huge role in this team. It's not like he's going to be at the end of the bench minimized or anything like that.
Joe Mazzulla's come up a few times. He's been, I think whether it's the interview with the Old Man the Three podcast that he did with JJ Redick, it's a really good listen for anyone that hasn't checked it out, or just, hearing him talk to you guys early in camp, those, throngs of media that are out there, obviously at the Auerbach Center. There's an element of it seems comfort. Obviously, he can be self-deprecating. I think he's got a good personality that we just saw very little of last year. He got tight as the season went on and never really relented. I think it's part of why Charles Lee and Sam Cassell are here, but also it's just the transition to being the guy and knowing he's the guy. There's no interim tag. He had a full off season to prepare. He's going into a new year without just having it thrust onto him a couple days before media day, the way it happened last year with the Ime Udoka situation. It's just again, I'm guessing, I'm putting words in his mouth, but I'm guessing it's just the comfort of a new year and a full year and a totally different situation to where we were with him on a personal level 1 year ago today. How much of that are you observing, and how different, calmer, more at ease kind of within the job does he seem?
Yeah, he absolutely seems more comfortable, more engaging, less combative with us. There's no doubt. And he's acknowledged, like, look, I didn't know kind of how I was supposed to be. I didn't know what this was supposed to be like. You gotta remember, this is a guy, like, he was like a behind the bench assistant coach before he took over. It wasn't even a situation where, like, if somebody got ejected, Ime got ejected the year before, Brad got ejected, he's stepping, like, Joe is nowhere near a role like this. He coached Division II college basketball in Fairmont, West Virginia. Was his only head coaching experience. So he had to figure out what it means. Now he said he's kind of like grasping now. He understands he holds an important position in this city, and like what he says means a lot to a lot of people. And he's kind of taking that responsibility a little more. And it's been cool to see him just like open up more, because he does have a personality down there. And like when you generally, like, I wrote a big story about him at the start of last year where we went out to lunch together. And in that, he was like really engaging and comfortable. And in that setting, so you see he had it there. It wasn't like, it didn't exist, but he just wasn't comfortable necessarily bringing it out just yet. Of course, a couple other media members and I have joked around, let's see what happens, when you lose to the Hornets in mid-November and what the interactions are like. But, obviously every coach would be upset by something like that. But for now, yeah, he's more comfortable, more outgoing, and I feel like just a little more open, which will be good for everyone. It's good for him, good for fans, good for the players. I think it's just a better situation so far.
I think I remember that story. I think in that, as a nugget in that story, about him asking his wife if he could live in an RV in the parking lot outside the gym. And I remember reading that, being, this is the kind of psychopath you want to be the head coach of your basketball team. Guy just wakes up and he's like, I don't want to waste any time from here to I just want to wake up, walk outside, and be right at the gym. So I thought that was, because it comes across too in that interview you mentioned with JJ. He talks about how, previous to getting this job, like, he got off the service elevator because it was the closest to the film room. He'd be like, I didn't have to see anybody, talk to anybody. I could just go from point A to point B and just get my work done. And so, like, a lot of people give Joe a hard time, and, he's learning on the job. But at the same time, like, I was a very big Joe defender, because it's like, man, like, he went from D2 Fairmont to the coach of the most successful NBA franchise. This is not easy. Especially with the circumstances. But I think, considering he has more help this year, considering the roster's, I think, a little bit better. Again, he knows his players a little bit better. I think it's going to be a much better experiment. How have you interacted so far with the two new guys that headline the bench with him and Charles Lee and with Sam Cassell? It's nice having those two guys in the building. Have you got to talk with them much?
Yeah, I spoke to Sam at Summer League in Vegas, and he seems like he's a guy they needed. Especially with Damon Stoudemire gone. He'll have a little more prominent roles maybe than Damon, but similar, having a guy with that experience, championship experience in his case. He's worked a lot with Jason Tatum after practice this week when we've been able to watch for a little bit, just kind of doing individual stuff. And Tatum talked about yesterday saying, like, it's cool to hear his stories and hear his perspective. The guys appreciate stuff like that. It's just different. And this, let's be honest, the Celtics staff over the years, dating back to the Stevens era, hasn't had a lot of like former NBA players with significant experience. They just haven't. So it was important to bring him in. And I sat down with Charles earlier this week. Really impressive guy. I don't know how much fans are going to see him talk or whatever, but people are going to like just his general vibe. Really, really positive. Seems to have a good outlook. This is a guy that interviewed for head coaching jobs around the NBA. Very well respected. He's already been working with Jrue, obviously. So that, I mean, I said, I was like, would you ever have thought that was, going to happen? That wouldn't even been on anyone's radar when Charles Lee was hired. Oh yeah, maybe later this year, Celtics will actually trade for the point guard you've coached for the last few years and helped win a championship. So he's excited about that. Jrue is excited about that as well.
So Sam Cassell would be a good hire as a head assistant on any staff. But obviously what makes him a uniquely good hire here is that he's part of that group that last won a championship here in 2008. And we've heard the team talk a lot in recent days. Joe Mazzulla sending an email out to former Celtics, basically imploring them to, come back and be part of this. And I feel like that's something that we saw, a lot back in the late 90s, even when the team wasn't good, early 2000s. I think a big part of it was probably Tommy Heinsohn's presence still being here. Obviously he's passed, but you had the old guard come around, and some of those guys, obviously, many of them have passed away over the years. And so it's kind of that next generation to where, we're talking about the Paul Pierces and the Kevin Garnetts. Paul's been around at training camp the last couple of days. I don't know, maybe KG comes back at some point. I imagine he will. He was here last year. I don't know if Ray Allen even shows face. I think that would really get people's attention, obviously, now that fences have been mended there after all the years of personal turmoil. I think there are a lot of guys that just go beyond the Dana Barrowses and the Leon Poes and, Eddie House and Scal, guys who are part of the broadcast crew now, people that, be nice to have more and more obviously come back. And it's clear it's important to the organization. What do you see this year looking like from that regard?
Yeah, it was kind of cool. Like, obviously it was an emphasis for Joe, and he saw it right away. Like Satch Sanders, who's kind of he's the old guard standing, obviously him, Bob Cousy, and was at the very first practice sitting there watching. Obviously, Paul's been here now for a few days this week and like worked out with Tatum for like a month in LA this summer. It's kind of has more, I think the way Joe described it was you see a lot of guys, NBA players, they go back, off-season comes, they go back to their colleges. Tatum, you saw it, went back to Duke a couple of weeks ago. He's like, guys are always like, I got to get back to my school. I get up in school. He's like, I want that same feel here where former players feel like that they want to come back here and hang out and maintain that connection. It'll be interesting to see how it progresses over the year. It might be something that's more visible during training camp. But there's no doubt it's a new push, and only composites I think can come from it, especially for the current players to be around these guys. When you do mention that 08 title team, the last team to actually win it in Boston, kind of they can tell their stories and share things about their experiences, which I think the younger players do appreciate.
When it comes to building a winner here, and I think the team's had a very good offseason, I was not sold on their moves pre-Jrue Holiday trade. I thought there were a lot of questions coming out of the dealing smart, acquiring Porzingis, some obvious holes that have been shored up by bringing Holiday in. So I'm much happier now than I was, a week ago or however long ago. But as we look forward, I think it's very clear listening to ownership that there's an element of impatience. They've been on the cusp. They've been to the conference finals 5 out of the last 7 years. They've obviously not won a championship since 2008. It's Boston. Banners are what it's all about. Wick knows that, and the rest of that group as well as anybody. And so when it comes to spending and, potential second apron penalties long term, that type of thing, what impression do you get in talking to people behind the scenes or just hearing from ownership in general about how uncomfortable they're willing to get financially to actually bring another winner here?
I mean, they've made this pretty clear the whole way. Like they're ready to spend, and these moves are indications of that. Like Jrue's a $36 million player. Like they're in the second apron now. It's there could have been some maneuvering elsewhere. Like they're going to be well into it, and they're prepared for it. It's something that's new. Obviously, they're trying to formulate. How long you're up there, and what long-term penalties, how it's going to affect you. But if you're building a championship team, like that's something you're going to have to deal with. Like look at the Warriors spending over the past 10 years. It's been just astronomical. One thing, if you're a fan, you feel good, and I know people haven't always felt that way about ownership around here, but like that you feel pretty good about Wick and Pags, I would say, and their dedication to it.
There's also a $6.2 million trade player exception that they have, if I'm not mistaken. Is that something that, because I know in certain moves they've made, they've lost certain abilities, certain exceptions, that type of thing. But I believe they still have this TPE here. Is this
Yeah,
something?
that one's from Grant.
Yeah. Do you think they'll use it?
I mean, like anything else, it's a chip. Like they've had so many trade exceptions over the years that have expired without being used, and people don't notice. But it's always good to have, something in your war chest that could be an asset. I think they're gonna, they'll look and see. Like, look, the way this offseason went, it was also like definitely a vote of confidence for some guys, particularly Peyton Pritchard. Really, like the way they, even if they hadn't brought in Jrue and traded Malcolm, like giving up Smart and not really finding a replacement, like that was like, hey Peyton, we think you can be a significant player for us, and they still feel that way. You're gonna see what Sam Hauser can do. O'Shea Brissett has performed pretty well from people I've spoken to. They want to see the second unit, but they will have a chance if it doesn't work out. Like if these guys struggle or their injuries, they're going to have opportunities come the trade deadline to make an upgrade if they need it. And they've given up some picks. But they still have, beyond the ones they just traded, and then they have the pick swap with the Spurs in a few years. They have plenty of firsts to deal with, and they have 1 million second-round picks. So there'll be chances for them if they find a need to upgrade their roster in February.
Do you view the front court as, after dealing Rob Williams, having a hole now that needs to be plugged? Blake Griffin's come up a lot. Doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Is there a move that you see, not obviously a monumental one, but a move that you see potentially being made before the season, or is that more of a potential in-season adjustment?
No, I think that if there was a move they were going to make, like they would have done it. Like I think they like Luke Cornett. Again, this isn't a team that's building to have 1 million regular season wins. Team building for the playoffs. They'll reassess, and inevitably there'll be some injury that makes them kind of reformulate things a little bit. That's the one thing that could derail this team. I do feel like if a top 6 guy gets injured, that there isn't a ton of depth in terms of championship depth. But yeah, I don't anticipate anything happening. And they have a bunch of these guys on partial guarantees right now that they're intrigued to see in training camp. The Wenyen Gabriels of the world, the Lionel Bantons. They're going to get an opportunity to show what they have throughout these preseason games.
Before we let you go, how do you think they stack up with the Bucks? I think in many ways, and I'm not the first to mention this. In fact, I think we talked about it last week when the writing was on the wall for the Holiday trade, that there's an element of thanks that goes to the Bucks organization for bringing in Damian Lillard, because I'm not so sure Jrue Holiday becomes available if they don't. And so not only does he not, Lillard, that is, go to Miami, he obviously goes to one of your chief rivals, no doubt about it, but it frees up an opportunity for you to get better as the Celtics. So that's, kind of a win right there. I think the Celtics would happily take that. But now these two teams, another team that is pretty top heavy. Middleton is not what he was at this point, but you still have as good a 2-man tandem in Lillard and Giannis as there is in the NBA. How do these teams stack up at the top of the East as it comes to, who has the right to potentially face, if it's Denver again on the other side in June?
Yeah, the Bucks can't be pleased with this. Like, they had to do this. Obviously, Damian Lillard is available. This was not only a move to bring in Damian Lillard, more than anything, it was a move to keep Giannis. And they have to do it. You have a player like Giannis is a generational talent. You have to do whatever you can to make sure he's with your franchise. I get all that. But the idea of freeing up Jrue Holiday to go to your biggest competition in the East, like, can't be good for them. Like, I'm sure they considered it and they were aware, like, this guy's probably going to be flipped, They would have probably much preferred him end up on the Clippers or something like that. And if you're the Bucks as well, the reports about Middleton, like right now, are not encouraging. He hasn't really done anything in training camp yet. And you hear Adrian Griffin be really vague about it, without any specific dates or details, just kind of saying like, oh yeah, he did some side work. He's right on course. Okay, what does that mean? When is he actually going to play in real games? Maybe he's fine, but it's certainly ominous the words that are coming out of Milwaukee right now. So I think right now the Celtics have to feel a little bit better about their position than Milwaukee does, given that.
Yeah, totally.
Adam, we'll go ahead.
No, totally agree. I'm 100% with him on that for sure.
Adam, we'll let you jump off as we Evan and I will keep going for a little bit here, but we'll monitor Syracuse's road to 10 wins and hopefully get you again mid-season at some point here.
Well, they got the bowl game. That'll count. So if they 9-3 and a bowl win,
Sounds good.
I'm not holding my breath, Adam.
They got to try and steal one this weekend. This is a big opportunity.
Big one. This will be a big one.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Adam Himmelsbach of the Boston Globe, absolutely. Always great insights and analysis, and obviously just behind the scenes talk about what is going on with this organization. And, we're going to be keeping an eye on that when it comes to Jrue Holiday, to Derek White. I didn't even ask about a potential Peyton Pritchard extension, but that's another one that, as time goes on, we'll be thinking about. But Ev, I wanted to make sure that, normally we'd sign off right along with the guest, but I wanted to give us a few minutes to talk as well, because we said, for anyone who listened to the show last week with Abby Chin, and obviously the Damian Lillard trade had happened, seemed like Jrue Holiday could be available, wasn't likely to stay in Portland. And I mean, we laid this out. I mean, I flat out said to you, this is when, like, in another universe, we'd get fancy and just play you the clip from last week. But I flat out said,
I might still do it.
I said, hey, if the please go right ahead. You can cut all this crap out and just put that in instead. I said to you, if the Celtics have an opportunity to get Jrue Holiday and it cost them Malcolm Brogdon and Rob Williams and picks, that was the trade. I outlined it for you. Are you in or out? At the time, in the moment, you didn't like it.
Nope.
I said I was all about it. We didn't really force Abby into a declaration there. But as the week has gone on, as we've taken a dive into the analytics, you've sort of been reminded on our text thread quite how impactful a player Jrue Holiday is. Was it more of the emotional turn of like, man, it sort of sucks to let Rob Williams go, or have you just sort of done a full 180 and come around on the trade?
I mean, I still have legit concerns over their big man depth. Like, I think I'm justified, and I'm very, like, I think it's okay that I'm worried about that.
Sure.
I will say though, if you were trying to replace Marcus Smart, as we said with Adam Himmelsbach, like, this is the perfect guy to do that. I mean, he really is just kind of the perfect carbon copy for that, and even a better version of that. His shooting numbers are off the charts. He's going to be the best passer on the team by a wide margin, as I kind of joked about between you, me, and Seth. They now have a guy on the team that could make an entry pass in a little post if they wanted to do something like that, and I feel comfortable with it. Look, you got to do two things. One, again, they have big man depth issues. I think if any one of Al or Kristaps get hurt, they're in a real bind. It will help though that they have better rebounding forwards, wings, and guards than most teams do. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are excellent rebounders. Jrue Holiday is a more physical guy. He's a guy that can go in and get rebounds. I think he averages about 5 or 6 per game throughout the past couple of years. So it's concerning, in terms of, defending the glass and defending the rim and all that stuff. That being said, this is the perfect fit. I mean, you couldn't have done a better job of trying to bring someone in here that's going to do exactly the other things that you want a guard for the Boston Celtics to do. He's going to fit seamlessly with Jaylen and Jason, especially Jason. I'm curious how they'll stagger. Like, they have so many intriguing lineup options now with Jrue Holiday. How they stagger these 6 guys is going to be really interesting. I've been a big proponent of, like, Kristaps Porzingis is more of a 2 than a 3, and people have given me like a lot of flack for that. They just have 4 guys that can flat out score at any time. As a lot of people want to point out with Milwaukee, how tough their 2-man game is going to be. Boston's got 4 dudes that are all, when they're on fire, going to be impossible to stop. I said this a while ago, one of the shows you took off, justifiably so. I think you're on vacation. That the Celtics kind of felt like Phoenix East already, and they just took that wall and bashed it down and made a new one. They are definitely the Phoenix Suns of the East. I mean, you compare those two teams; they're both very top heavy. And I dig the approach. again, I think I'm still my concerns are valid, but Jrue Holiday is just a spectacular player, defensively, offensively. I love that he talked about picking up guys full court with Jaylen Brown. I'd love to see what that looks like with Derek White, and like that would just be a lot of fun. You create a lot of havoc that way. Maybe get some easy points that way. But Kaufman, you want to talk about taking a victory lap? You've been doing this ever since they traded Marcus Smart. Like, they're not done. This roster is not finished. I mean, you've been adamant, pounding the table every week, it feels like. So how does it feel to be right? I mean, you were calling this months ago, and here we are, ready to rock and roll for training camp, and you were right on the money with that.
I just think it became increasingly clear that the roster didn't make sense. Like it had obvious questions that I trust in Brad Stevens, and it was the first time where he made a move where if he was done, I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I didn't know where they were going from there. And so now, not that they could have foreseen this at the time that they acquired Porzingis, they knew Damian Lillard was going to be available. They didn't know he was going to go to Milwaukee. Nobody was talking about Milwaukee. And of course it springs, Jrue Holiday free, and they're able to kind of complete the puzzle. But, at that time there were a lot more questions than answers, not only for people like me who were skeptics, but definitely I'm sure within the Celtics front office, and saying, all right, we're on the right track here. We're building something, but how do we finish the job? Where do we sort of shore this thing up? And I don't think they knew. And this, it happened, and it works. And I think that part of the reason that, I didn't say this to Adam, but I think part of the reason that ownership, Brad, whoever, that they were falling all over themselves during that press conference with Holiday, that, as Adam said, might have even made Jrue a little bit uncomfortable, is because they knew how important it was to not only get another adult in the room, which Jrue Holiday is, as Adam noted, as respected a player as there is in the NBA. He's like 3-time teammate of the year or whatever it is. And, you see the post his wife puts out about leaving Milwaukee and sort of accepting the realities of the business, but the sad truths of it as well, and establishing yourself in the community, and how important all of that is. And now looking obviously to it here, but how important it was to get another adult in the room along with Al Horford. I put those two, and that's not disrespecting anybody else on the roster. It's just most guys are younger. Horford, Holiday, they've been around the block. They are guys that really fill, and Holiday maybe even more so. Maybe he is truly that new Smart in terms of a de facto leader of this team, at least in terms of more of a vocal leader. But also, I think the team really wanted to get a guy in there. Not that they were going to get any guy. It's just Jrue Holiday fits the bill so perfectly. I think they wanted to get another guy in there or not even a guy in there that isn't on the coaching staff, that has won a championship. That knows what it takes but is not just it's different when it's your starting, a starting guard who is still an impactful player, a top defensive player, a leader, a scorer, all of the different things that Holiday does, even in his early to mid 30s, versus if you were adding like your, the 10th guy on your roster that was rarely going to crack the rotation, not going to play much. He was kind of going to be your Udonis Haslem type guy who could speak to it but couldn't really show it and display it. It makes a difference. It matters when you bring in a guy that has done it and can still do it and can still help lead you there. And so Holiday, for just a litany of reasons, we haven't even talked about what a killer shooter he is, or Brown talking about his insane competitiveness and all of that, all the different things, all the reasons that everyone is just obsessed with this acquisition, and rightfully so. It's not about, like, as much as we joke, and I joked off the top of the show, partially joke, part of it was a legitimate pat on the back because I don't get to do that often. But it's not being right so much as it's just like, now it makes sense. Now I understand this roster. Now I love this roster, and I'm truly. And I didn't think I would say this at the end of last year when everyone was having the conversations about, do you kind of like blow up the core, quote unquote, which they really, it's still a 2-man core at its, but like Rob or Smart, like these guys were your 3, your 4, like you've really, made monumental changes, Marcus Smart's out. Malcolm Brogdon's out. Rob Williams is out. Grant Williams is out. In is Kristaps Porzingis. Jrue Holiday's in. I mean, these are significant moves for a team that has been to the conference finals 5 out of the last 7 years, that has said enough is enough. We want a banner. And I really like where they're at, and I'm really excited for this season.
They know that. I mean, this is confidence for Jalen and Jason. They're like, we got the right two guys. We just got to put the right guys around them. And it's not, they're not going to sit here and say that Marcus and Rob and like, but at some point, you know, you have to get past a certain level. And the Celtics level at this point is the Eastern Conference Finals and the finals. And look around you. I mean, again, teams are going to continue to get better as we get along here. And Boston is just, and I give Wick and Brad and Steve and everybody, you know, some credit for just saying, no, we're not going to sit here and sit on our hands and hope for the best. Like, we have to be proactive about this. And they went out and did it. I'll go this far with this. This roster to me is the most talented roster they've had since the KG, Paul Pierce, for Allen years. And, you know, people be like, oh, what about Al and Gordon and Jalen and Jason? Jalen and Jason were babies. They weren't even, and Kyrie, you know, look, we don't have to get into that. All right.
Well, I mean, that what was it? The 18, what was the year that Hayward got hurt? Was that the 18-19 or 17-18? It was 17-18, right?
Years right now are tough for me. So it's around.
So anyway, the first year of Kyrie and Hayward, even though Hayward went down 5 minutes into his Celtics career, was never the same after. Yeah. But the feelings going into that season,
I think say we're right there.
Yeah, that roster was.
I think we're even higher than that, to be honest with you. I think the expectations are like way higher than that, because we know what Jalen and Jason are now. And so now you're like, those guys are 26, 27, you know, will be upcoming this season. Those guys are in their prime, and they have some guys around them to give them even more ammo than they had back then. Like, I think if you put these two teams on the floor, this team would just wipe the floor with that team. And again, I'm not trying to say, you know, Terry Rozier and Marcus Morris and like, this team would wipe the floor with that team. They would know how to handle it.
I'm itching to go, man. I'm excited about this season. I think that, like I said, I've said it time and time again. It's just now it makes sense to me. All of, you know, now that the full picture is completed, and yes, I think they could still make a move, potentially, to a small move, nothing significant, you know, to add somebody in the front court just for depth, you know, as we said, like, get through the regular season. You need bodies. It can be someone of Cornette's caliber player, you know, something like that. Blake Griffin in an ideal world, I'm sure the team would love to bring back if it could. I don't think that's going to happen, but based on all the reporting that's out there. But yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of a hole for sure. I think your concerns are absolutely valid. But to me, you had a hole at guard that was in some ways more important to shore up with the acquisition of Porzingis. So raring to get going. Preseason games right around the corner. You know, like literally like a few days away, and regular season is coming up. It's, you know, hockey season is starting in a few days. We're here, man. Like, winter is here. We're not at Halloween yet, but damn it, winter is here.
Yeah, but we made it though. We got through like the August slog of nothingness, and now we're here in October. We're like, everything's great.
There was no slog. We were just diagramming what was going to happen for you.
We did. Yeah.
The question is whether you were listening and paying attention.
Don't answer that question. Just, you're paying attention now. That's what matters.
Yeah, that's all that's going forward. All right. For Adam Himmelsbach of the Boston Globe, Evan Valenti, I'm Adam Kaufman. We're going to be talking like actual basketball and fits and what it looks like on the floor and all that good stuff next time. So be with us next week. We'll see you then. Rate, review, subscribe, Celtics Beat, wherever you get your podcasts. Till then.
With the busy fall season already in swing, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up fast with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. Too busy this fall to cook? But want to make sure you're eating well? With Factor, skip the extra trip to the grocery store and the chopping, prepping, and cleaning up too, while still getting the flavor and nutritional quality you need. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes. So all you have to do is heat and enjoy, then get back to crushing your goals. Looking for calorie-conscious options during the busy season? Try the delicious dietitian-approved Calorie Smart meals with around Less than 550 calories per serving. This September, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door. Ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. Head to factormeals.com/newsfeed50 and use code newsfeed50 to get 50% off. That's code newsfeed50 at factormeals.com/newsfeed50 to get 50% off.